history begins again for Iowa on the high seas. With pomp and circumstance befitting a former queen of the Navy, the mighty Eye awakens from a 26-year slumber to once again answer the call of her country.
I hereby place the United States ship Iowa in commission. God bless and Godspeed.
Her very name evokes images of victory at sea in a bygone era when might was right and biggest was best. Now she steams toward a new, more uncertain horizon to add a fresh chapter in the log of fighting ships that have sailed with the name of Iowa. The first Iowa was a Civil War-era wooden screw sloop, a fast sailing ship with 23 guns designed to make hit-and-run raids on commercial vessels. But by the time she was fully ready, the war was over, and she never saw active service. The second Iowa began the tradition of a true fighting ship, as the 11,000-ton battleship distinguished herself in the Spanish-American War. On blockade duty off Cuba in 1898, the Iowa spotted Spanish ships making a break from the harbor and fired the first shot in the Battle of Santiago Bay. Under the command of Captain Fighting Bob Evans, the Iowa let loose with her 13, 8, and 4-inch guns, and within 20 minutes had left 2 cruisers aflame, sunk a destroyer, and forced another onto the rocks. When the fleet surrendered, prisoners were taken on board. Quoting Captain Evans's account,
blood was all over the Iowa's usually white quarterdeck, and 272 men were supplied with water and food by those who a few minutes before had been using a rapid-fire battery on them.
This Iowa was in and out of mothballs 3 times before meeting her somewhat ironic end. A warrior that had defended herself and her country in a valiant career served now as the target in gunnery practice for her sister ships. She sank to the bottom of the Bay of Panama to the strains of the national anthem as sailors circled around to salute her. One admiral summed it up,
"She was a good ship, and that was good shooting."
The destruction wrought by World War I convinced leaders to do something to contain the doomsday machines of the day, battleships. In 1922, the United States, Britain, Japan, France, and Italy signed the first successful arms limitation treaty, setting restrictions on the number and size of warships. In accordance with the treaty, the third Iowa, a 43,000-ton man of war still under construction, was dismantled and sold for scrap. The treaty would hold for a decade before battleship fever would once again run rampant. The Big I lent new class to the American naval fleet, the Iowa class. The New Jersey, Wisconsin, and Missouri would follow her design lead. Crews worked around the clock to launch her into World War II, and it was a major event in history, August 27, 1942, when Mrs. Henry Wallace broke the christening bottle over her bow. She was to be the leader of the fleet, the pride of the Navy. The authoritative Jane's fighting ships called her the most powerful ship afloat, and certainly the largest. 3 football fields could be laid on her deck. She was as tall as an 18-story building. She displaced enough water to flood 46 acres of Iowa cropland a foot deep, and it would take the entire population of Lenox to man her 3,000 stations. Her unmatched firepower was anchored in her 16-inch guns. In a common phrase of the day, they could fire a shell the weight of a Ford, the cost of a Cadillac, to accurately hit a target 23 miles away. She inspired a bond between metal and men that 40 years' time could not tarnish.
When you fire those 9 guns, and the ship goes like this, she moves.
Actually moves sideways.
It moves.
I never believed this.
It moves. That's how powerful it is.
I never believed this until we bombarded Japan in the daytime. Here's these battleships lined up one right after another. And I was standing in the after superstructure, just outside, and you could actually see those battleships behind us move, and then they'd sit there and rock.
I'm going to recall, I'm going back on, you remember, 40 years now. 40 years. We're sailing down, and off on the port or starboard, I don't recall, there's a small ship. There's a small ship off on our side. And we activate the guns, and this thing didn't sink. It disintegrated. Do you recall that? Well, it was a junk type thing, but it was an ammunition ship. And this thing, when we hit this baby, it didn't sink. It just disintegrated. Just like, and when it came down, there wasn't hardly anything left on the water.
The destroyers liked us because
We could give them ice cream.
yeah, they would zip in through the fleet and pick up down pilots. And then they'd bring them back to us, and every time they'd bring back a pilot, we'd give them enough ice cream for the crew.
Candy bars or anything
they
they
would
would have
love
in
it.
stock. Anything in
And
store.
so they loved the battleships because they got all the goodies. We had ice cream machines on board. We had 30 days fresh supplies. We could eat fresh food for 30 days because they didn't have any facilities to have that. They'd be on dry stores, battle rations, while we were eating fresh fruit. So they just loved it to pick up a pilot and bring it over. They bring it to us because we'd give them the ice cream. Take it back to the carrier, they didn't get the ice cream. We transported.
And we could give them more than one flavor if we sent our mind to it, couldn't we, Doctor? Huh? If we sent our mind, we could give them more than vanilla.
My little girl was 2.5 when the ship was right out the Miller. And then we went back home and watched them, having watched her go under the Golden Gate back to war. And when we go to the movie and the good old newsreels would be on, Kathy was, sometimes we'd see the Iowa, in the newsreels. And she'd say, Daddy's ship smacks the bad Japs.
I think probably when we went into that battle, we probably, distance-wise, we were overextended for the range of the aircraft. And I recall that listening to the intercom, Japanese talking in English, asking for permission to land on the Lexington or land on this cruiser, and the request being denied because we couldn't handle our own personnel. And then you'd hear it dive, and then you'd hear the flight into the sea. But I also remember that night where they took the battle wagons on one side of the cruiser and destroyer and lined them up and turned all their searchlights off and ran the carriers right down the middle of the ocean so we could pick up our people. Now, we lost a lot of people the first battle because we didn't pick up survivors. This was a nighttime landing, and when it came daytime, they were gone. But we lined those carriers right up down the middle of the ocean and turned the searchlights on, which was unusual in wartime, to bring those babies in home, the guys home safe. And I think we saved, this maneuver saved a lot of lives. Because these guys are coming in. I was listening to them on the radio, and they're out of gas. They're just in a glide pattern when they came in.
Landed on the first carrier they got.
And then when they landed, they got out and they dumped the thing over the ship, over the side of the carrier, so the next plane could come in and just kick the plane off the side, to get the next one in.
We turned around after that then and went back up north and bombarded the Japanese homeland itself. They broadcast back by radio while we were actually doing it. People could hear the guns going off, the shells going off. And we could hear the guys in fire control talking on the telephones, giving orders. Because we'd been back to the States and radio gear had been put aboard to broadcast the end of the war back. And the peace treaty was the surrender was supposed to have been signed on board the Adams. And when Roosevelt died, Truman switched it over to the Missouri. But we still had the last bit because they didn't have radio gear. They had to they recorded it, put a whale tape, sent it over to us, and we broadcast all the ceremonies back in the States. So we got the last laugh on them anyway.
It is a centerpiece. For instance, during the Korean conflict, whenever the ship would go into the 7th Fleet, they would position it in the center of the fleet with destroyers around it and carriers around it, but it was the center because it was big and awesome. Very seldom was the Iowa ever shot at, although at the time we were in Korea, we had a fellow aboard who was a skipper, Captain Smedberg, and
he thought nothing of going a mile and a half or 2 miles offshore, where he was very vulnerable to the smaller cannons and that they would shoot with. And he would go in that close so he could shoot 15 miles inland for support. But we very seldom ever got shot at, simply because they were afraid of the retaliation of what the Iowa could do. Not only did we have big 16-inch on there, but we had a whole mess of 5-inch and 40 millimeters that at a mile and a half offshore could have devastated anything.
She was a magnificent ship. Very clean. Had an excellent crew. And I think probably she's as good a ship as any there was in the world. I really do.
Peace is hell on old fighting ships. Strategic air power and atom bombs brought the battleship era to a close. In less than the lifetime of a sailor, they were all gone, all but 4. This Iowa, which had won battle stars for combat in the Marshall Islands, Okinawa, the Marianas, Korea, was hidden away at a remote pier in the Philadelphia Naval Yard with her forgotten sisters. September 1982, the USS Iowa is once again alive at sea. Eased from her crypt among the mothball fleet, towboats guide her to the Ingalls shipyard in Pascagoula, Mississippi, where the floating fortress of 1944 will be transformed into the Big Stick of 1984.
I took back a piece of the ship's deck back to Norfolk, and it was about 3 feet long, and it was a genuine piece of teak, and it had nails protruding from it, and it was filthy dirty and wasn't at all cleaned up. And I used it as a show and tell for the troops because it was very difficult to explain to the crew what the ship looked like now, other than by pictures, and what was required of them to make the ship what it was like when it was in commission 26 years ago. And I used to tell them, hey, Roosevelt may very well have been pushed across this piece of teak. And that's the tradition that you have to live up to. So here's the old piece of wood. Here's the young labor force. Let's apply the young labor force against the old piece of wood and come out with a battleship with the same reputation and can do the same sterling things that the Iowa did when she was first commissioned.
Things that gave us a real challenge, or a scare, I should say, they really did that, was the technology that was thought to be lost. We have built steamships, but the last ones were in the 70s. We didn't have an extensive group of people in that area. The gunfire systems on the ship had been basically out of production since the 50s. And we have templated and manufactured in our shops a lot of pieces that we couldn't even get a plan and piece number for. We just send the material to the shop with basic instructions to template from existing. And they just have to use their imagination where something is broken out of it.
Communications gear is updated to the computer age. Part of the chow line adopts the fast food look. Engineering's main corridor, Broadway, is restrung with 143 miles of electrical wiring. And some of the original teak deck has given way to a helicopter pad. Nowhere is the mix of the old and new battle wagon more apparent than in its weaponry, the mainstay of which is still the giant 16-inch guns.
They're designed mainly for shore bombardment, and they are probably one of the best weapons they've got in foreshore battery, because you don't have to get in that close to wipe out targets. Power on the inside of the chambers are, it's various amounts. The distance of the guns are in excess of 23 miles, which you got a 2,700-pound projectile. I like shooting a Volkswagen out the barrel.
The main mission of the ship is to do naval gunfire support. Naval gunfire support for this ship consists of the 16-inch guns and the 5-inch guns. Those guns were existent in the ship when we started. In addition to that, with the sophisticated missiles that we now enjoy and have operational in the inventory, the decision was made to put armored box launcher Tomahawk cruise missiles. Tomahawk cruise missile can be fired against surface ships, or it can be fired against land targets. I think if you look in Jane's fighting ships, you'll find that the Tomahawk in the land mode will go 1,500 miles. Okay, so what's 1,500 miles? Well, if you draw an arc around Pascagoula, Mississippi, 1,500 miles, I can bring a Tomahawk back to Iowa. If you look at the 250 miles for a surface ship, it's a very long way when you're fighting a sea battle.
Here you have one of the 4 consoles we have for the Tomahawk weapon system on board the Iowa. One of them keeps a database up, keeps track of where everything is. When it's determined that there's a target amongst all those ships out there, this engagement planning console can go into to use, and you can fly the missile out. You can set several waypoints so that the missile can take a circuitous route to the target. It does not have to fly straight, and you determine whether you want what you want the missile to do, how you want it to look for its target, what search plan you want it to use, and those kinds of things from this console. And as you punch all that up, you send that over to the other launch control consoles. They get an alarm over there, and it's a cue for the man to press a button and start his engagement with the launcher itself.
We have 16 Harpoon missiles. It has a very good range, a 65-mile range, and it's against surface ships, straight surface ship. It's an excellent anti-surface unit warfare weapon. Very reliable, very simple to operate, very little bit of maintenance that needs to be done on it.
Let's run the course with enthusiasm, positive attitude, and style. Set your goals higher than ever before, and the result will be that the Iowa will return to the fleet with a reputation it so richly deserved.
We have guys who are 55 years old who come back on active duty. That's a significant change in lifestyle from 3 squares a day on land and home at 4 o'clock to working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. They've done very well. I'd have to say flawlessly. But they provided stability to the younger guys who signed up to come to this ship. You know, the 17-year-olds. So the 55-year-old and the 17-year-old get together, and the 17-year-old academically frankly has done much better. We have a very rigid, formal courses of instruction for whatever rate the guy may be in. And the academic results were very much in favor of the young guys, who really annoyed the older guys. But they worked harder and they pulled sat too. So it's been a very good mix. Every once in a while, when things aren't going my way, or I perceive that I have some difficulty that I'm fed up with, I go out this door and out onto that teak deck. I walk up to the forecastle and look back at the beauty of this ship. And that's enough psychic income to go around. That puts me back in the proper perspective. That's well worth it.
No, there's a great feeling of nostalgia for old battleships, just like there's a feeling of nostalgia for sailing ships. But the battleships era has come and gone. Battleships were designed to wage war against battleships. Well, the New Jersey and the Iowa are hardly going to be fighting among themselves. There are no battleships for the Iowa to fight with. So I'd say that it's a terrible waste of the taxpayers' money, and the Iowa will stay in commission probably for 5 years and then be returned to mothballs somewhat ignominiously, I suspect, after a period of 5 years, because it has no role.
This is one of the biggest bargains that the United States Navy ever got. The cost for the reactivation of Iowa is less than $400 million. And that includes all the new equipment that was installed aboard, surface-to-surface missiles, all the new complicated radars and electronic devices. That package, $400 million, is about the equivalent cost of a small frigate. This ship has much more capability, offensive and defensive, than a frigate. So we have a real bargain here.
There's absolutely no purpose for a new and improved battleship. First of all, the Iowa is an old, tired, worn-out battleship. It has no role in defending the United States. It has no role in maintaining control of the seas. The Iowa in commission will be a very expensive proposition for us to Maine because it is defenseless when it is sent out on the high seas and will have to be defended by at least one cruiser and 3 or 4 or 5 destroyers. The battleship has no capability against Soviet nuclear-powered submarines. The real people who control the sea today are nuclear submarines, both ours and the Soviets. And the battleships are just sitting ducks for submarines today in this modern era.
Obviously, no ship is completely capable of withstanding nuclear explosion, at least one that's close aboard. So it wouldn't be fair to say that that the ship is unsinkable. That's not true. However, it is, without doubt, the most survivable platform in our Navy today, probably the most survivable ship at sea anywhere in the world. It has up to 17 inches of armor. That 17 inches will withstand a whale of a lot of punishment. The ship is compartmented such that we can control flooding, and I would say that it is safe to say that this ship can withstand much more punishment than any other ship in the United States Navy.
USS Iowa is very vulnerable to any form of missile attack. And there are 30 countries that have an Exocet missile or similar to it, just like the Argentines had when they were firing against the British ships. It may be difficult to sink the USS Iowa, but it'll be very easy to destroy all of the topside electronics, which is so necessary today for that ship to perform its functions. The USS Iowa is also very vulnerable to an attack from a Soviet nuclear-powered submarine, which could fire homing torpedoes at the Iowa, destroy its 4 propellers, and stop that Iowa dead in the water. There is no way to defend a ship like the Iowa against Soviet homing torpedoes. No way to defend their propellers or to protect them from an attack.
This ship would not operate independently. The ship has no sonar, which is the device used to locate submarines under the water. We would operate in a battle group, probably in a carrier battle group, but certainly would have with us escort ships that are specifically equipped to find submarines. We also would carry with us a helicopter, which is equipped to find submarines. So our primary defense against submarines and the torpedo would be a screen of escort ships, as well as our own helicopter defense.
My friends in foreign navies think we're insane. They can see no reason whatsoever to be bringing old battleships out of commission and putting them into commission. They think that we must have just so much money that we can afford to waste all kinds of it, that it boggles their mind. They think we're crazy. They laugh at us with our battleship. And we won't be able to stand their derision and laughter very long. In about 5 years, all of those old battleships will be back out of commission again in mothballs.
Most of the people in the world who see Navy ships don't understand what it is that they're looking at. Even though most of our ships are very effective, have a great deal of capability, it's not always obvious from looking at the ship that that capability exists because of the level of sophistication of our weaponry today. People who look at a battleship understand what they're looking at. There's no doubt when you see a 16-inch gun what its capability is. And I think that's important for people to see that the United States Navy is determined to remain the #1 Navy in the world. And that I think that determination and that will of our people to retain the position of the #1 Navy in the world is well reflected in this ship.
The battleship is coming into being because we have in our foreign policy assignments finding that we have commitments as a leader of the free nations of the world that bring us into situations where we have a need to be in 3 or 4 different places at a time, some of them at a great distance from our country. The battleship Iowa, along with the New Jersey, is able to go those distances and they're able to stay there and provide a tremendous amount of support for long periods of time. And when you have commitments that outweigh the numbers that you have, then you have to make up for that in staying power, and that's what the battleships have, and that's frankly the reason why we have overhauled a couple of those to try to meet these commitments.
The close relationship between the people of Iowa and their namesake ship was sealed in silver in 1896. The legislature paid $5,000 for a 41-piece silver service that incorporated designs of the state's traditional symbols with those of the sea. The collection has been aboard every Iowa in commission since then.
On behalf of the state of Iowa, its citizens, and the State Historical Department, I am pleased to present the USS Iowa Battleship Silver Service to you. Iowa takes great pride in its namesake and those that have served on her. In recognition of the first battleship, USS Iowa, Iowa's legislature commissioned this tribute, and it is appropriate that this now be returned to the ship to continue on this heritage.
Citizens of Iowa, I want to thank you on behalf of the ship USS Iowa for the security that you've provided to our silver and our bell for these many years. I guarantee you that we will continue to show it the respect it deserves and safeguard it the way that you have.
The bell that has graced the state rotunda will also return to the new USS Iowa, but the steel and wood model of the ship, which the Navy loaned to the state in 1967, will remain. The 3,000-pound model is accurate to the smallest detail, built from the original blueprint of the Iowa and constructed before the ship itself. It will continue to awe school children, trigger memories for those who have served aboard the master, and reflect the esteem in which Iowans hold their battleship.
This year, 1984, is the year of the USS Iowa in recognition of the recommissioning of this famous battleship, and we wish that you have many successful voyages on this ship, which is named after our state. Thank you.
If we don't fire a shot, we will have done our job. And I think most of our crew members feel that way, honestly. We want to be prepared to do the job, and if we're adequately prepared to do the job, that's our best defense. There's the least likelihood of our being attacked if the enemy knows what our capability is. So we're not anxious to fire these weapons in anger. We're only anxious to be prepared to do so. And that's what my crew is working for. We don't feel that this ship represents devastation. We feel it represents the determination of the American people to be number one.